But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's the three Amigos. Great way to start your weekend, of course. And Keith Patterson doing a great... well, he's looking like a shadow there. I'm not sure if he's... There he is. And when he comes on, he's got such a blurred picture. He looks a bit... We'll get some great photographs of Keith tonight. How are you, lads?
Good on. Right, mate.
Good to see you. Your internet's terrible, mate. I'm not sure which part of the world you're in today, like, but it's not the greatest. But we'll go with it, mate. And if we can keep you, we can keep you. If not, you'll have to tune into some other thing. But Steve Hastie's on his way. He did text us earlier on today to say that he's got a long job today and he was stuck in a field somewhere, but he's on his way back. So we'll just go with it. And anybody who's interested in the tennis, I will endeavour to update you. One set all between Djokovic and Toon fan Norrie, and unfortunately he's 5-2 down in the second set at the moment. So still a long way to go, of course, but can the Toon Crusader get through? We will keep you updated as best we can. I'm sure you will in the chat as well. Keith, we'll have to take him out. He's frozen. So it's a bit like those of you who followed this programme from the very start. It's like the old days, Mitch, when you and I used to do this on Instagram.
Back on Instagram Live, aren't we? Hi.
Instagram Live. We're back in March 2020 or April 2020 when COVID was starting out, and that's when it all started. So, as always, it's up to you to set the questions. Tell us which direction you want to go in. If we've got anything to tell you, of course, we will. Wayne Bennett does like to send in stuff, and Wayne sometimes doesn't get a chance to watch live, so he sent us this morning. He says, "Morning, Steve. Hope you're well. Question for tonight: if you can get the chances, I'll be catching up tomorrow. As somebody who really wants the DRB deal to go through, do you all think that this would be our marquee signing? If not, do you think we'd still get one? And if so, who would you now all like?" Good question, Wayne. DRB for me, again, I'm not a connoisseur of watching the other leagues, the other countries' leagues. I don't have the time, and to be honest, even when Serie A used to get played out on Channel 4 across the year, I wasn't a big fan of it. So any player that gets linked with Newcastle, I'm left relying on other people's opinion or picking up what I can off social media or off YouTube. So for me, I don't know enough about Diaby to be able to say, yes, I want him. Yes, he's class. Like everybody else, I can go and look at his record. I can say what he's done in the past. So is Diaby, to me personally, a marquee signing? Not really, because I don't know enough about him. That's my honest opinion. But looking at the stats and looking at the stuff that I've seen, he looks like a player. He looks like he would fit the remit. What I would want to know is what's he like off the pitch, what's he like in the dressing room, and what's his attitude like? Because ultimately, for me, I genuinely feel that is a bigger thing with Eddie Howe and the people that he's brought in than anything else. And those of you who've listened to Kieran Trippier's sound bites today will tell you that is exactly what Eddie Howe is looking for, and clearly what Kieran Trippier is looking for as a player in the dressing room. He said he's delighted at this moment in time with the new incomings at Newcastle. He's delighted the target's in. He thinks Pope's a great acquisition, and he's delighted with Botman. So already we're seeing it come from the playing side as well. They're happy. So you've got to keep that. You've got to build it. You've got to keep it going. You've got to build the momentum. I've just done TalkSport 2 today. Just done 15 minutes on there. That was a polar opposite to doing it last year when I did the season build-up last year. I'm actually buzzing. I'm enthusiastic. Last year I was talking about we'll be lucky to stay up. But yeah, look, Diaby, for me, honestly, I don't see it as a marquee signing because I don't know enough about him. But clearly, the guy's a player. I'd love to see him come to Newcastle. Who, if he didn't come, would I like to see? Who would I see as a marquee signing? It's got to be the goal scorer. It's got to be who scores goals. And anyone who scores goals at Newcastle United is somebody who is going to be revered and celebrated. So for me personally, the marquee signing, I think, will be the goal scorer. that's my answer in a nutshell. Mitch, what about you?
Well, the minute I hear the words French international winger, I get excited because we've had enough French international wingers here who excited us. It's that simple. I don't pretend to be the world football guru. I'm aware of who he is, and I'm aware how high regard he's held in. You're absolutely right. That character is going to be a big decision maker on who comes in. But no matter who they are, whether they're a quote unquote marquee signing or whether they're a young kid wanting to make their way, I think the character is part of what both Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth are looking at in terms of the rounded view of a player. I think the other name that were very heavily linked is Asensio at Real Madrid. But being linked with players at European clubs like Real Madrid and Bayer Leverkusen again, it's been a long time since we've been linked with that. And it feels bloody good to be talking about that. What interests me about Asensio and Diaby is they're both essentially potentially the same kind of position. Or they're looking at one as a winger and Asensio potentially as a forward. Could we even talk about bringing both in? No, that's getting towards marquee signings. Bringing two in like that, that's a statement. That's a statement to the football world. We mean business and we're on our way here. And do you know what? It wouldn't surprise me to see both brought in. Why not? But then, if that was to happen, if that was to conjure, I think the next thing is we've then got to start sorting about how we trim the squad and how we start to build that 25 plus, and how we align it all together to tick all the boxes and take stock of where we're at. I do think that these owners will work on a flexible basis. If somebody becomes available of what they see as a value signing and everybody's agreed on it, it'll happen. Yes, I think, again, character is so important to Eddie Howe and how he wants to keep that dressing room. Had a very interesting discussion with somebody this evening, actually, about how certain loan signings influenced their team last season to negative results. That the loan signings came in thinking they were bigger than the club they were coming to, and it upset the dressing room so much it screwed their season. So very, interesting way of looking at it in terms of character and how a player comes in and how wants that dressing room to be. And it's super exciting times to be talking about 35, 40, 20, 30, 40 million pound players coming into Newcastle United again and talking about taking players off of big name European clubs again. It's happy times, and long may it last.
Yep, long may it last. Keith, look, you wouldn't have caught the question. Wayne Bennett was asking, he's somebody who really wants the Diaby deal to go through. If it does go through, do you think that would be our marquee signing, Keith? And if not, do you think we'd still get one? And if so, who would you like as your marquee signing?
I'd like Paqueta. Yeah, I've always. Hello, Steve.
Hello.
I like Paqueta because I just think he'll bring more from Bruno. I think they'll do something special. But Diaby's supposed to be dynamite, so I'm not too sure we are going to go with a. I think the marquee signings people were thinking about out of our reach. The Nunes of the world.
That old Lanzarote internet's letting me down again, I think.
Well, the net players that's at Bruno. My internet's brilliant over here, mind.
Yeah. Well, go on. We've got you there. We've got your voice.
I say my internet's brilliant.
Oh, you there, Keith?
You what, mate?
Knock twice if you're there.
Yeah, he's gone again.
It's obviously
Yeah, he's gone. It's a nightmare. And Steve's
gone now.
Steve's now frozen. I don't know what's
Christ.
going on today. Dear me,
I'm 4,500 miles away, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just going back to what you said, Keith. Yeah. You'd love to see Paqueta as your marquee signing. Yeah.
I'll be stupid Otello. Jesus Christ.
Oh. Yeah, I'm going to take him out because that's
no. He's signed for Arsenal, Keith.
You kind of look, I'm just going to repeat the question to you, Steve. I don't think we're going to get Keith tonight. It says basically Diaby is Wayne Bennett's ideal player, and he thinks that's a marquee signing if we'll get him. But he says if we don't get, Diaby, who would your marquee signing be? Who would you like to see come in?
You know what? We've probably got more chance of getting Diaby than we have getting a connection with Keith, haven't we? If the truth be known, if it was going to go for my marquee signing, you know what? I would loved us to have got a Ward-Prowse. That would have been my marquee signing. To be perfectly honest, experienced Premier League, established player, England international, set pieces, knows the game inside out, the right age band, but if he's out of our reach simply because he's already an established Premier League player, then so be it. But having said that, Phillips was an established Premier League player, and he's managed to go from Leeds to Man City, for example. And there are plenty of other changes happening between Premier League club to Premier League club. So for me, Ward-Prowse would have fitted perfectly into our midfield. I know very little about Diaby, to be perfectly honest. The last few weeks have been rather helter-skelter for me in terms of trying to keep up with all the comings and goings at Newcastle and all the rumours and such like. And I wish I was lying on a beach in Tenerife like Keith, because then I wouldn't have. I might have had some time to actually sit back and look at them. But no, I mean, I can hear what Keith's saying roughly there when he's talking about Paqueta. I wonder whether the whole Paqueta situation is simply because of the link with Bruno, or whether there is more smoke to that than there is fire in that respect, or whether there genuinely is an interest. But until it gets to the end of the transfer window, we'll never know, will we? But no, Ward-Prowse, that's the sort of player I would like to see get into that midfield alongside Bruno, alongside Joe Linton, and whomever else we can drag into the midfield,
Yeah, okay. Keith, I think your internet's still playing up, mate. Give us a blast. Well, now, God almighty, that was a quick turnaround. He's now just giving us a view of the sea. Are you still got a time delay?
He sounds like he's got a bloody Imperial probe droid sitting outside. Jesus.
Dear me, Keith, I think we're gonna have to call it a day, mate. I don't think we're gonna get you tonight, mate. Thanks for trying.
Thanks for trying again later on the laptop.
All right, mate. Good stuff. Good stuff. You give it a go anyway. That's all that matters. He'll try and get back for lookalikes, I'm sure. Diaby's absolutely lethal. After World Cup, he'll be worth 100 million. We need to get him, and I mean that. If we don't get him, we are insane. So Space Eye Raider. Tom Dixon put this one in earlier. Newcastle women to form a development team for the 22-23 season, giving young players in the North East a platform to progress as footballers. Tom says it's great news, Mitch. It is, isn't it? It shows the commitment to the women's team, I guess, as well. They're going across the full spectrum. We covered last week how they're bringing in young talent, but they seem to be focusing a bit on the female side of things as well.
Because they've got a lot of catch up to do. You people have to understand the level that the women's team play at is sort of the fourth tier with the women's game. And because of problems with association with the club over time, they've never really had the support that some of the top women's teams have had from the associated Premier League teams or Championship teams. So there's a lot of catching up to do, and having some sort of structure in the women's games is really, really important. I can tell you that from my former sister-in-law, who is a very, very good player, plays for Ashton Ladies. Came through the system in the North East at the same time Lucy Bronze, well, she's played with Lucy Bronze. And it's almost like potluck that Lucy Bronze goes on to become one of the big names in the women's game, and somebody else then becomes just somebody chugging around in Ashton. And we need, the women's game needs structure. It's only going to get better with structure, with proper structure, like what you've got across the board. And we're talking about this on Wednesday night about our club needing root and branch reform from top to bottom in an academy system. The women's club have had nothing like that. And the only way that's going to develop is if somebody comes along and helps them put structure in place. And our owners, as part of the bigger picture of Newcastle United, the region, want to do that with a women's team. And you know what? That's fantastic. Can only benefit not just the club, but the region, the reputation of the club across the board. And it would be great to see the women's team go from strength to strength and start to come through the divisions and aim to get to the Super League level. Because when that Super League, we've talked about this on here before, and Steve probably understands it way better than I about how when the women's game was wanting to be accelerated, suddenly teams like Doncaster Bells, who won everything under the sun, were told, well, you're not associated with the Premier League team, so you might as well just get stuffed. And that's not fair. Really not fair. And so from, the point of view of our owners and Amanda, and particularly, wanting to meet with other owners and look at how the women's side of the game can be benefited from structure. That's basically it. And it's very much needed. And again, it just shows that they're not just here for the short term. They're thinking about the bigger picture. They're thinking about the longer game here. And as a club, to represent the region, representing the highest level possible in the women's game, is also super important now. More than ever, probably. And so to give those kind of boosts, that's fantastic.
Yeah, Steve. I mean, it's just more progress behind the scenes, isn't it? And as Mitch quite rightly said, it's a lack of a neglect of the women's team, really, which means that anything that we do with them seems like progress, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the neglect goes way back. I mean,
yeah,
Newcastle's women's team was nowhere near the level of Sunderland, and Sunderland were one of the top teams in the women's league. Only a matter of probably half a dozen years ago, if probably slightly more. At that particular time, I remember Colin Locke, who ran the women's team, pleading with fans of Newcastle United to help support the women's team. Got very little support, if any, to be perfectly honest. Certainly got no support from the football club. They came to us as NUFC Fans United, and I think we held a function and we spoke to them and we understood what was going on. We made representation to the club at the time. They were struggling, and this is how bad it was. And Steve, I think you were there at the time, and so was Mitch. They couldn't even get permission of Virgin, the club sponsors at the time, to wear Newcastle football kit. Because not the club, not Newcastle United, but our sponsors didn't want to be associated with the women's team. And we're only going back to the time when we, 2010, 2011, 2012, whatever it was, when we had moved from Northern Rock to Virgin Money. You then got into this situation where they couldn't wear the black and white. It was basically a group of girls, a family being supported by parents, wanting to play football and playing football and enjoying it. That's what it was about. Then Durham came along, and Durham started offering girls who wanted to play football the opportunity to also go to university and further their education. And Sunderland got caught up in it. And a lot of the Sunderland players went suddenly, oh, I can go to uni and I can play football and I can get sponsored by it as well. So they were there. Newcastle then dropped in. We became then the third club of the three women's teams in the region at that level. Then the WSL started. Sunderland got into that. Durham were just one below, and Newcastle were, well, we had nothing. We didn't have it. Yeah, it was basically a Sunday League team. And that was the way it was left. When the penny started to drop with the club, give me his dues, Mike Ashley, from my understanding, underwrote the debt that was any debt that was existing within the women's game, within the women's team for a couple of seasons. And that has certainly helped stabilize the women's team. And it has given them a certain direction. It's given them the ability among themselves with the people who run the team to get that direction that they needed. And now it's still sitting in the fourth tier. And this is where my understanding of women's football becomes very, very suppose the word's nepotistic in a way. You've got a club like Man United who didn't want to touch women's football and then got themselves parachuted into the League One below the WSL. Purely politics, sporting politics. Didn't want to put them into WSL, but knew they had enough financial backing that after one season they would get promoted, which they did. And you just look, the fact that they had players who played for England who were parachuted into the team as well. So they were guaranteeing themselves promotion. And that was because the WSL wanted the Chelseas, the Man Cities, the Aston Villas, the Evertons, and the Man Uniteds and Liverpools and such like to be involved. But Newcastle had missed out. They were gone in that respect. Now, the conversation earlier on, actually about the women's football and the fact we got 28,000, I think, at St James's Park to watch a women's game. How much of that? And I've got my cynical hat on here, and probably will get somebody knocking it off very, very quickly. How much of that was because there'd been a previous game at Old Trafford, and we all saw social media. We can beat 30,000 that turned up at Old Trafford for the women's game, and lo and behold, we got 28,000, which was amazing. It was only a couple of weeks ago the girls were playing in front of 64 and a dog on Druid Park, you know. And this is where the gap is. This is what the girls are trying to fill. This is what Amanda is trying to fill. This is the structure that Neil's talking about that needs to be put in place, and it's going to be gradual. And it's undoubtedly, you know, as we'll see during the European Championships, the interest there. One of my neighbours plays for England Schools. Schoolgirl, 15-year-old, lives across the road from me. She was at Newcastle, playing with the foundation. She didn't get picked by the Newcastle women. She got picked by Sunderland, and she's now at Sunderland Ladies and just playing for England Schools at under 15 level. Why? Because they had something better to offer our parents in terms of a structure. Exactly what Neil's talking about. It will come. And no doubt it'll come. And no doubt the people at St James's Park, anyone, are there. No doubt that the professional structure will be put in place. There's a huge gap to fill. All I would say is that gap shouldn't be a gap that's measured between the women's team and the men's team. They're two totally different sports. The only similarity is they kick a ball around. And the girls should be allowed to develop at their own pace, their own time, and with their own resources. And they should be given resources and allowed. Piggybacking on the back of things, I don't think will do the girls any good. I don't think it'll do the women's team any good. I think it'll add more pressure to them. I want to see that team mature. I want to see it develop. I want to see the club do it properly, and I want to see the steady progression that's needed, because I think in the women's game, if you give a big bang like that to suddenly go and you're in the big league, I think it has the potential to come crashing down. And I think that's an awful lot of pressure that's then getting placed on that side of the club. It's my mind. That's what I feel. That's how I feel about it. I desperately want to see the girls succeed. But I don't want to see them having all that pressure placed upon them, because these girls, we look back at youth football, we look back at our under-18s. There's a lot of conversation on Wednesday night about the under-17s who are coming in and will they make the grade. And anyone who's read an excellent article in The Athletic only a couple of weeks ago about how they put young footballers under immense pressure to succeed and what happens when they fail. We don't want that happening to the girls before the girls' game is established in the Northeast. We don't want to hear that somebody's lost interest or somebody's not getting this or not getting that, or the pressure's become too great. I think it's a fine line that Amanda and Mirdad and Jamie and the rest of the board and the foundation and all the other structures that are there to support them. I think it's a fine line they're going to have to work with, but I think it's an important line. And if it's done properly, we will be seeing top-class women's football at St James's Park in the near future. But don't put them under the pressure and don't produce that false economy, because they are playing currently in a league that is way below probably where the club should be. But let the girls develop and let the girls mature into really good quality women's football. and show and give them the time to show off. There's a lot of people talk about the size of the goals. They should change this. They should change that. That's an argument that is totally for another day on another show on a totally different schism to do with women's football. The size of the goals, the size of the goalkeepers, the way that the game's played, etc. Because then what you're doing again, you're comparing the professional men's game to women who are, it's not a conversation that needs to happen. Let the game develop, let the rules, let the way the teams are going to mature. That's mine. What a rant. That's only what?
Yeah, but people loved it. People loved it. Fantastic, mate. Absolutely fantastic. That's what happens when you get stuck in a field when you're not expecting it on a Friday. You had something to get off your chest. So well done.
You're right,
it looks
exactly.
like
all that clear pigeon shooting. I can still hear it in my lugs.
Yeah.
Well, I did promise you all that we've got a new team member to introduce today to the three Amigos, and I've often toyed with the idea of including a musical section to one of the shows, and maybe reviewing some albums. And somebody who used to write for Players Inc. is Warrington Minge, who used to do some fantastic album reviews. Now he's a bit shy and doesn't like to show his face, so ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Warrington.
Hello, Warrington Minge here with my album review of the week. And what better place to start than one of my favourite albums of all time, definitely maybe by Oasis, that was released on the 29th of August 1994 and sold 86,000 copies in its first week, sending it to number one and making it the UK's fastest selling debut album of its time. This album helped to spur a revitalisation in British pop music in the 1990s. A little bit of trivia: Slide Away was written with a guitar that Noel Gallagher was given by Johnny Marr. Noel quit the band whilst touring the album. Liam Gallagher wanted the opening line of Live Forever, the album's third single, to be Baby, but Noel was adamant it should be the more mysterious Maybe. And Noel wrote much of the album whilst working for a company subcontracted to British Gas. He also hurt his foot when a heavy gas valve fell on him and he was given a job in a cabin signing company equipment in and out. Singles from the album included Supersonic, which hit 31, Shaker Maker, which hit 11, Live Forever, which broke the top 10, and Cigarettes and Alcohol, which peaked at number 7. Slide Away was actually considered as a 5th single, but Noel said no band ever releases 5 singles from the first album. That's all from me. I'll be back next week with another classic vinyl from my collection. Toodle pip.
A great insight from Warrington there, like a new member of the team and a little bit of music, out of the show, lads. I'm sure you'll join us in welcoming him to the show.
I presume we've all got a copy of that as well. I'll be disappointed if you haven't.
Yes. Lots of people seem to think he's some kind of relation to me. Mark says an Oscar-winning performance by Steve Wraith. Steve Wraith, your lips aren't moving, says Gary. Lots of... Yeah, you know what? Lots of comments about his name.
I met him last night, or I met a bloke who said he was him last night at the Tyson Fury event. It certainly wasn't you. I'm gonna have to meet that character again and find out what's going on if that's the case.
Keith says, "What's it got to do with football? Nothing. It's music." Is that Harry Potter's brother? Says Vince Smith. Definitely, maybe is Tom's favourite album. So there you go. I thought he'd be a ginge, says Andrew. It's bloody Paqueta, says Jody Tune for Life. Steve's new lookalike is Dustin Hoffman's character in Papillon. So but there'll be more from him next week. Fantastic stuff. Okay, let's see where we're going to go next. I did have a point which I wanted to bring up. Space Eye Raider. This is a good question. Lads, why do you think our Intertoto win just gets skimmed over as if it didn't happen? It's a European trophy. We never get credit for it. It's just the old Conference League. Now, I was going to say the same about the Japan Cup, 1982. You know, we never get, Kevin Keegan's first trophy as a Newcastle manager. In fact, his only trophy other than the promotion year in '84. But yeah, the Intertoto, it was a good competition, but it does seem to get glossed over, Neil, doesn't it?
Well, like many competitions that get sort of played around with, and people wonder why they exist. It's one of those, isn't it? You know, and it's not like we've got a big Spartan trophy for it. If I remember rightly, Scott Parker got a little certificate. It's hardly something really to shout about.
Scouts.
Yeah, but at the same time, we don't talk about it because it's one of these things that's difficult to recognise. Because at the end of the day, what did it really get? We didn't cover with glory, did it? And I'm sure everybody else who qualified for European competition by winning one of the Intertoto spaces probably does exactly the same with it. Because I mean, it's worth a bit of paper that the certificate's written on, really, in terms of glory to the club. And does it really make a difference to our European coefficient? I think that's why, because it's something and nothing, really, isn't it?
Yeah. What's your take on it, Keith? Intertoto Cup never gets celebrated.
What on the Intertoto? Well, I mean, it's hopefully it'll be things that we forget about very soon when we start winning proper stuff. But that the Texaco Cup, it just the fact that we've mentioned them means we've been so scarcely involved in proper competitions. But for me, it's a bit of an embarrassment. I've been going since 1969, and we won a trophy in '69.
It's our equivalent of the Papa John's Trophy, isn't it? Really.
That's it. So I'm looking forward to where we don't mention them again.
Yeah, I can understand that, Steve. It's it's an interesting question. It's one we've never been asking. I mean, joking aside, I always mention the Japan Cup because it's the only bit of silverware that I'd seen as a Newcastle fan when I was a kid. But yeah, I mean, is it one best forgotten, the Intertoto?
I think the problem with the Intertoto Cup was it was basically a pre-season competition. It was a prelude to getting into somewhere else. It was a prelude to, you win this, and if you're willing to start your season early, like in June or something, and you're willing to go to these far outreach places in countries that you couldn't even spell, never mind point to on a blooming calendar or a geography book or whatever. That's what it was.
Map's the word you're looking for, Steve.
Map, that's the word. That's the word. Map. It's not a sat nav. You cannot point to a sat nav. It's what happens when you drive. You forget the word map. But that's what it was. That's the way it went. And then like Neil says, Scott Parker, he got a certificate. At least the Papa John Trophy comes in a box. And it's got a little bit of flavouring to it. And I'm waiting for the day when that NUFC memorabilia site on Twitter puts up a tracksuit and it's got Scott Parker on the back with a little Boy Scout badge that says winner of the trophy. That's what it'll be, because that's what it basically became. Like you say, it's a certificate, and you also in the Boy Scouts you got a little badge as well to say you'd won something. That's what it kind of equated to at the time. But you're right, Keith. We're desperate to win something, so we'll talk about it. We talk about the Texaco Cup. We talk about these competitions because we had no other success in any other. And let's hope that's the end of it. Let's hope at the end of this season that's coming, we can actually go, hey, look at that. What a deal. Hey, lads, what a mess we're in Trafalgar Square. And still none of us dived into 3 inches of water because we're a little bit more sensible than that. But we still had a great time. That's what we want. We want to have that win, don't we, under our belt. But it's just one of those things. We'll cling to success as best we can, but let's hope that's the end of it, and let's hope we're talking about FA Cups, European Cups, League Cups, Championships. That's what we're looking for. I can still dream, I suppose.
Jeff, good to see you on, mate. He says, well done, Vince, on your 10K Great North Run. A grand job and great to chat you on Sunday. Yeah, well done, Vince. Ran the whole 10K Great North Run in his Darth Vader costume. My brother as well ran it in memory of me mum. So well done to both of the lads. It was quite a hot day as well. Did very well to get round. And anyone who follows Vince on social media will have seen the clip of his feet. He's got blisters on top of blisters. It looks like he's done about 20 firewalks in a row, Steve.
He does, and anyone who sat next to him yesterday at the Tyson Fury event will know all about it. He told me about it at 7:30.
I thought he would.
At 9:30.
And people wonder why I sat in the balcony. Stephen Yes, well done, Vince. Joking aside. Well done, mate. Stephen Kennedy says, why do so many fans fight Steve Bruce's corner now he's gone? Did they forget that he almost relegated us? Saved only by the cavalry riding in to save the season. Never mind calling the fans and upsetting the playing staff. Do they forget so quickly? Yeah, I mean, there are a few people, Mitch, on the defensive on Twitter, but I guess this is just one of those Twitter sphere things, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And so many people in the media defended him when they were genuinely trying to defend the indefensible. We know what we watched with our own eyes. He effectively pissed on my back and told me it was raining. And that's all he did for 2.5 years. And telling me we were making progress. Well, look, you just saying what progress? Progress to the championship? I mean, that's where it was. I don't think he can defend his record. You can't defend his record at West Brom, where he's gone there. He can't defend his record at Aston Villa and how things ended there. Can't defend his record at Sunderland and how it ended there. And if you look at how it ended everywhere, it ends the same. It's like Groundhog Day. And he's stuck in this loop of not being able seemingly to take responsibility for his own actions and blaming mainly the fans of the teams that he ends up leaving. And so you can't defend it. You can't defend because we know what we saw with our own eyes. We know where we were headed, and we know what would have happened if he'd remained in charge and Eddie Howe hadn't come in. And he left Eddie Howe to do a job that's never been done before and probably will be a long time before it's done again. No wins in the first 14 games of the season, and we'll still stay up handsomely. And that's in spite of what we had to put up with at the start of the season last season. And nobody can tell me where that wasn't going to end up in disaster under Bruce if Bruce had stayed on longer. He picked up, then went miraculously to a West Brom side who were 6 points off the playoffs when he took over, and he ended up something like 15 points off the playoffs. It's just time to stop talking about this man now. We're going forward, and we're going forward so well. And all of the devastation and silliness he left behind is now long gone. And therefore, we should all now just stop talking about him. He's irrelevant to Newcastle United now, and he's irrelevant to the journey we're on, and he's irrelevant to where we're going in the future. And that's where we need to be looking.
Yeah, Rachel, yeah, we add our sentiments to this. Rest in peace to Father Dermot Donnelly. Thoughts are with Deck and his family. It was reported earlier this morning that he was seriously ill, but he hasn't, he hasn't come through. So sad news. That very sad news. Keith, the Steve Bruce saga. I mean, 12 months ago we were looking at Steve Bruce going into the new season dreading it, but I mean, it's not our problem anymore. And people do tend to rewrite history, and you know that there is a lot of rubbish written about him, and a lot of it comes from his mouth.
I was surprised at the question, actually, because I haven't seen anybody defend him on Twitter. So I haven't seen, that kind of ilk. I've just seen people hammer him. He was a complete nut and knacker. And he was very disingenuous the way he treated the fans. Because,
like Mitch has put it so eloquently, because he took us for mugs and he took the piss. And if you just look at the family, he ruined the Longstaff brothers. You know, he just, them lads were like showing great progress and hope as 2 kids, local lads, that's come through the system. And he destroyed them. He went on a personal vendetta against them, and he refused to talk to them on a basis at work. So when he went into the training ground, he completely ignored Sean and Matty. But what kind of man does that to 2 kids reporting for work? Kids are like just over 20-year-old, and he's treating them like burglars. I think the man's a complete utter knacker. And I've not seen anybody defend him, but I'd give them both barrels if they did. I think he's an absolute biggest waste of time. In when you go back over all our managers, you know, we've had some terrible managers, but he comes with, he's just one of them managers, keeps getting a job. It just shows how desperate clubs are. And what happens, he always seems to, and everywhere he goes, he blames the fans. Everywhere he goes, it wasn't him. And he goes on this guilty, man, honestly, boils my urine just talking about the man, because he's just a complete, utter thief of money when he gets in a football club. Can't stand the man. Never liked him when he first got him. Desperately didn't want him. And by God, I'm pleased to say the back of him.
Yeah, well said. And Steve, it's like a lot of people are saying in the chat. Move on. Bruce Who, says Rachel. Move on. That's the way I feel. You know, we shouldn't still be discussing him. He's got nothing to do with the football club anymore.
Yeah. Do we have that many sort of disappointed delivery drivers, food delivery drivers? Is that what it is? Are they all disappointed that they're no longer delivering pizzas and kebabs to his house? Maybe that's what it is, the takeaway drivers. Maybe it's just takeaway drivers on the internet and on Twitter and social media who are complaining. But no, seriously, I mean, we all know what we saw. Mitch is absolutely spot on. Keith's spot on. We saw what we saw. We saw the type of football was being played. We saw what happened to various players. We saw the tactics that were employed. We saw the square holes in round pegs and vice versa. We saw performances. If you remember that, I mean, probably the worst we've ever watched. That drab 0-0 against West Bromwich Albion, where he brought Dwight Gale on where we needed a goal and played him on the wing. You know, it was everything. It was as though it was like all a test for us, that we're being put through some sort of purgatory, that we'd done something wrong. Absolutely shocking. Can I just go back to the sadness about Father Dermot? He was a good friend of our family, great friend of my brother's. I knew him for years and years. Absolute gentleman, lovely guy. Had an awful lot of time for everybody in the Northeast. Worked out at the cathedral, did an awful lot of work at the youth village and concerts, which he set up. It was all his idea, helping young people. I'm devastated at the news. I know the rest of our family will be devastated news, and I just want to pass on my condolences to everyone in the Donnelly family at this time. It must be torturous for them, what they're going through. His mum and the rest of them, the girls and Declan. Very, very sad news. Very sad news for the community. Sad news for the Northeast, and sad news for all those who knew him and spent time with him. I'm gutted for them. Really am.
Yeah. It's a tough time, but our thoughts are certainly with them. Okay, Blue Rhythm Boys asked us a few times. I had got it saved. Thoughts on the Danny Drinkwater interview? Has the game of football created a situation where circumstances are far too regular occurrence, not financially viable, and the players suffer? Yeah, it was. I don't know. Has anyone caught up on this interview with Danny Drinkwater or not?
I haven't caught up on it properly yet. I'm aware of bits and bobs, but I haven't sat down and looked at it properly. So it's difficult for me to comment on that as such. But does it basically revolve around where he's been left in limbo because of the money he was put on and the transfer that was made, and then he's not being able to move on because of difficulties in negotiating contracts, I presume?
Yeah, I mean, basically, he said his nan and granddad passed. His dad got leukemia. He lost his dog. He was drink driving. Just basically says that the Chelsea nightmare wasted 5 years of his life. He said he wasted some of the best years of his life, as a footballer. He spent most of his time at Chelsea on the bench after his move. He suffered mental health issues whilst in West London, and he's still angry about how his big career move turned out. So I guess what he is saying after playing a pivotal role in Leicester's, title winning side is that he moved to a big club, expected it to work out, and it didn't. And it's a strange one. I guess the point he's trying to make is that there's not enough maybe care at a football club like Chelsea.
Steve, this is something I've banged on about for years, about the lack of pastoral care in football clubs. Ours has been no exception to that. However, I'm quite sure there's a lot of people watching tonight and in the chat who their first reaction would be, yeah, but you were handsomely paid during all of that time. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, money doesn't buy you happiness. It never does. And anybody who believes that is fooling themselves. And you never know the demons people carry with them, whether they're potless or whether they're a multi-millionaire. There is at many clubs a failing in the ability to look after professional footballers who may need help outside of their footballing life. And it might look rosy when you're driving around in a tricked out Range Rover and you're on whatever a week, but it still doesn't solve all your problems. Our club, I mean, like I said, when I told the Marcelino story on a couple of the shows a couple of times, that was the classic example of somebody who had no help from a football club, was just thrown into the wind, expected to survive, and part of the argument is because we're paying you handsomely to do so, therefore you can use your money to solve your problems with it. That's not how it works, and it never is how it works. And it's why, for example, problems with drink in football are significant still. You listen to some of the guys that come onto the Under the Kosh podcast and talk to the guys there very frankly and honestly about some of the stories are hilarious. Some of the stories are super sad though. And that's what's lacking in the game, probably top to bottom, whether it's Chelsea, whether it's Peterborough, whether it's Hartlepool, or whether it's Stevenage. There's somebody in there somewhere could be struggling and isn't necessarily getting the help that they need, because just because you're rich doesn't necessarily mean you have the life skills to solve the problems that you have. But equally also, when you get these kids who suddenly go from a few £100 a week to £5,000 to £40,000 a week in a very short period of time, how are they helped to cope with that change? Mika Richards was very frank about his contract change in one of the BBC podcasts with Shearer and Lineker. About suddenly I'm on £40,000 a week and I've got more money than I've ever had. I don't know what to do with it, and my head's gone and I'm not playing at the same level anymore. These are all really, really important things that need addressed within the game. I think, ironically, one of the few managers who ever really did properly care about pastoral care players was Sam Allardyce. I've had 3 or 4 tales from players who played under Allardyce at different clubs saying, one of the things he did was he'd come round, sit at the kitchen table with a wife and kids and say, are you all happy? Are you okay at school? Is there anything I can do for you? Is the points just been made there? You could have taken a pay cut and moved. But would you? That's an easy thing to say. He'll also have advisors sitting, with him and hopefully, but again, we don't know what kind of advice these players are getting and who they're getting it off. Are the agents are acting in the best interests of the player or themselves? And I would suggest more often than not, it's the latter, not the former, particularly when it's somebody's brother, school friend, relative, and there's suddenly a small family business has been produced out of the player's talent. And that player will be acutely aware that his talent is carrying this whole small family business, and therefore don't want to rock that boat. And no matter how much money you chuck at it, that's a pressure that'll hit you that some people can't cope with. Not about what one to cope with, it's about what you can and you can't cope with, what you can and you can't deal with. Everybody carries their own life pressures and their own things, demons that they have to deal with. And some people do it exceptionally well, and some people just aren't equipped to. And those people need help. And that's where football clubs let players down on more than one occasion, in my opinion.
Yeah, Keith, what's your thoughts on this? Seems to be, gets a lot of people talking anyway.
I read the bones of the Drinkwater conversation, but how far to go back? I mean, George Best died at an incredibly young age, and his whole persona was never managed, and I think it would have been difficult to manage it. Look at Paul Gascoigne, you see the times when he's hit the wall, and you look at people like that. Look at Gary Speed, if you want to see tragedy in people. I don't think enough money is put into addressing what happens to people when they leave football. I think when they leave the club, I think, and they leave this game, some try and get a job in management, some try and stay in the game, some try and be pundits. But I think it's a hell of a thing to step down from the day-to-day involvement, going to train, having a purpose, and all of a sudden nothing just stops. And I think, there should be something set up in line with FIFA, in line with people like the EPL, where percentage might be 5% of the player's wages goes towards his well-being after he retires. I'm not talking about a pension. I'm talking about a compulsive group that you've got to join that will manage people and put people together. Because when you talk about people like George Best, and you see how young he was when he died, and you see Gaza fall off the wagon, and you see people like Gary Speed take their own lives, you stop and you just think, Jesus, that is management of a situation. Mitch has touched on it, that it's not an easy thing to do. And if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And you look at people like Alan Shearer, who's got a job in football. He could have got a job in management, but he's got a job in football. But there's not many Alan Shearers and Gary Linekers get that top job. There's an awful lot more multiples than people don't get anything. They come out to football and then they struggle. And I just think it's something that clubs and organisations and football associations should build in to the earnings they're making. When they're making this kind of money, there should be something for them after football. And people should manage. Remember when you were kids and you used to get a careers lesson? What do you want to be when you leave school? It should be what do you want to be when you leave football. It should be the same kind of culture and effort and drive that goes into that, because there's too many people just can't take the leaving of the adulation of being a footballer to the normal world. It's a short career, but nobody ever thinks of what they think. Money just doesn't solve it, because if it did, you wouldn't have premature deaths and people take their own lives. And there's a lot of footballers that we watched in the 70s and 80s aren't here anymore, and they struggled. The fashion news of the world, people like that. It's wrong. It's totally wrong. But to me, when they're making it, that's when they should be planning the leaving of the game. It's so sad.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Steve?
You know what? This kind of top and tails what I was trying to get at about the women's game. Put too much pressure on them too early. Trying to push them into a league that they're not qualified to play in, etc., etc. Yeah, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. But Steve, we got a great analogy last night, didn't we, at the Tyson Fury event, where Tyson talked to us, talked very openly and honestly. He went into the ring, he fought Klitschko. He had wanted to fight Klitschko and said he was going to fight Klitschko from being the age of 15 to the age of 27. And he won. He went in on 25 or whatever it was. He won. And from that moment onwards, his life spiraled down. He said he didn't know where he was going to go next. He walked out that ring and he did those interviews at the end of the fight and on the outside the hotel. And it was like, Christ, I've just won the world championship. I've just won the world title. I'm now the world champion. And he didn't know where he was going to go. He then ballooned. He put all the weight on. Mentally, he was shot. He wanted to kill himself. And then he managed to redeem him. And he said he redeemed himself when Wilder laughed at him about his size. And it gave him something to I've got something to aim at now. And he was brave enough to admit where his problem was and built himself back up. But he now describes his life as Groundhog Day. But he's at Groundhog Day that he's enjoying because he's just doing the boring, mundane things that he's never done before, like taking the kids to school, picking the kids up, going to the gym, picking the kids up, going back to the gym, watching the telly, going to bed 9:30. That's how he described it. And he goes, he loves it. Mind, he did add on the end that if somebody gives him 500 million, he's quite happy to go out and fight again. But he says he never fight. But this is what we're getting at, this is the difference between, say, Drinkwater now putting his interview out and Tyson Fury. Tyson has grasped the metal and understands what his problem was and has done something about it and is in a good place now. I suspect that Danny Drinkwater is probably not in a very good place, judging by the comments on of what he's talked about. He's still pointing the finger. He still feels his career was suffering. He hasn't taken on board that, and I feel for the lad because he was riding the crest of a wave, winning the championship with Leicester, going to a big club like Chelsea. Perhaps it shows, as Mitch is saying, the pastoral care that doesn't exist at Chelsea, the conveyor belt of football. The fact that they just throw you out. And I'll go back to the article that was in The Athletic about how youngsters at the age of 18 get dumped. People probably don't realise, but those youngsters often get told at Christmas. The cut-off point for an under 18 is December the 24th. Imagine it, December the 24th, the day before Christmas, and you get told by your club, by the way, you will not be getting a professional contract when at the end of this season. And it's Christmas Eve. And that's for some of those kids, their whole life since the age of 6 and 7 at that, being involved in that football club. And we saw that the kids that have just signed on, a lot of those kids in those 8 that have signed professional forms have been at Newcastle Academy since they were 6, 7 and 8-year-old. But there were other kids that were told there's nothing for you. No, sorry. But you get told 6 months beforehand. The Premier League turn around and the clubs will turn around and say, well, that's to help them to look for what they're going to do in the next 6 months, because that's the time when you can start going and looking at new jobs, new careers, university, etc. What they're doing is they're throwing them on the scrap heap at Christmas Eve. You know, it's like, that's what it is. That's the whole top of it. That is far too much pressure to be placed on a young lad at 17 coming on to 18-year-old, perhaps just turned 18, because your whole life has been geared to football, and then you're literally in your head, you must think you're on the scrap heap. Danny Drinkwater thought he was on the scrap heap at 28, 27, but he thought he was riding the crest. The money means nothing.
But also you see this in other fields and other professions, particularly with proteges and precocious young talent.
Yeah,
they then hit the place they want to be, and then get to 25, 26, then they've achieved all their life goals already. And they go through, they go through this 6-month period of, well, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah.
And that performance drops and everything, their life changes, and they get problems in their personal life. And some come through that, and some don't.
Yeah.
Some just don't. And that's not just in football, that's in it. I can tell you a tale about the pal of mine, who at one point was the youngest appointed oral surgeon, maxillofacial surgeon in the UK. Precocious talent. The guy was just ridiculous. Was like encyclopedic in his knowledge of things. He could tell lecturers things when he was a student because he used to read avidly about everything. And then he had a big wobble because he sat at his desk one day and thought, well, what else is there to do? And so again, you need a network to support talent like that, because they get lost. And I know to a lot of people that might sound nuts, but it happens. It really does happen. And when you're left sitting thinking, well, what do I do now? Everything goes south. Because you've got your drive's gone, your ambition's gone, your desire to push forward and your desire to advance gone. Because you've done everything that you set out to do at such an early stage.
Yeah.
And it's really, these are the kind of things that football clubs should be looking out for to help their players with. to pull them back to where they should be and protect their investments.
Yeah. And you know what, Mitch? People, it's that Jacob's ladder scenario, isn't it? People go, well, you can go down into the lower league. You can go, you're not quite going to make it. There might be a career for you in League Two. So that means, like, say you've got a youngster who was playing and he's on Newcastle Academy and he goes to League One, let's say, for example. He's taken somebody's place who was probably just creeping up to be good enough for League One, which means they drop to the conference. Then that means that somebody who was good enough for the conference doesn't make the conference. And it's that snowball effect. And it does. And it ripples through the game. It impacts. And at the top, there's nobody looking after mental health. There's nobody looking after it at the bottom. Society's expected to pick up the pieces. Families are expected to pick up the pieces. I mentioned Norman Whiteside there. Manchester United, absolutely fantastic talent. Worked and worked and worked by that club. He was a man-child, wasn't he? He was an adult, like a Wayne Rooney character, but even bigger and stronger than Wayne Rooney. Played in the World Cup at 17. Career was finished with 25 injuries.
Yeah.
Good on the scrap heap. Managed to eventually salvage something out of his life by becoming a chiropodist, I think. And that's, that was alongside that was all the drink problems and so on. And that we'll see it time and time again. Robin Friday, there was the most precious talent of the 70s, late 60s. Stan Bowles, what a fantastic footballer he was. But look at how his career spiraled at times. Would turn up into the changing rooms with 10 minutes to go because he was in the bookies next door, QPR, and the manager at the time thought nothing about it. Yeah, well, he'd be here and type on a team talk. That was the way football was then. But those are the Alan Hudson. We could go on and on of players of that ilk. But now we're going to have players of our generation, and then players of the next generation on, and it'll just perpetuate. It'll still carry on because there's no investment. Because football is success driven. The clubs are only involved in the success, and they see it as somebody else's problem. The problem of those youngsters is not their problem on after Christmas Eve when they've told them they're not going to be part of it. It becomes somebody else's problem who then picks up the pieces, whether it's a family member or whether it's the club they go to, and don't quite succeed. And the pressure that they're under then, because people are expecting them to succeed, they're expecting them to come back up because of what they've had, and they get looked down, and before you know it, they're just way gone down that structure, that pyramid. They slide away. Some of them might be successful. They might go to America or into Europe. Some of them might hawk their way around. Some of them might get into the Scottish Premier League, Scottish First Division, wherever. But it must be the most difficult path to follow to be a professional footballer. But people do it because the rewards are so great. And the pressures that families put the kids under as well. Anyone who's stood at junior football and watched families, watched moms, watched dads, watched the screaming that goes on at that kid, watched the screaming that goes on at other kids, honestly, it's way beyond what a lot of people imagine it is. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it is. Halfway through the show, big shout out to our sponsor, Spider Miner Worldwide Coverage from Garen, Nathan and the lads, the only cryptocurrency miner that can mine 5 different cryptocurrencies at the same time whilst using virtually no energy, and it's VPN protected. Buy yours now at www.miner.spidervpn.org. Thanks to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 0191 389 7245, and the Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wales and Newcastle, and the guys who made our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks also to Cleekai. Meet the new game over screen. Drop into a ClearRun device near you. Available on Apple Store, Google Play, and clearrun.game. Thanks to Mr. Vickies, who are with us this month, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 101 102. And thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. If you want to subscribe, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. Still 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to pose a question for us on the screen. We're available as a podcast as well on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest, which means you can catch up 24 hours after the YouTube show if you're out and about. And if you want to become a member, you can click join underneath the video and make a small donation, or pay a little bit more and get the membership pack by either using the QR code or going to NUFCmatters.com and clicking membership. For £25, you get a cup, a pen, a scarf, and a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw. If you're a subscriber, you can apply for a free car sticker, NUFCmatters.com. Just email John at the website. We do support the food bank on the channel, NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. And the matchday bucket is virtual 365 days of the year. Make a donation today to make a difference. If you haven't got your tickets already, there are limited tickets available now for the ball, $2.99 a ticket for the signed Alan Shearer ball, limited to 99 tickets. Enter now at NUFCmatters.com. And we are going to go straight into Tweet of the Week. Difficult one this week because I felt like I was wading through politics with Boris's departure, and there was quite a few with football connotations. Conservatives in absolute freefall. At what point do they call in Big Sam Allardyce? Said Andrew, which was a good one. Got a bit of a feel for the week. Mick Quinn says Boris Johnson has just said on Sky News, "I've not seen a cabinet this empty since I went on the official Goodison Park tour." And you can delete that and put the Sunderland Stadium in there, I'm sure. This one from Tim Burgess, 66 ex-members of the Fall in 40 years, 38 ex-members of the government in 24 hours. Yes, the downfall of Boris certainly created a lot of content on social media this week. Not that long ago, Pep Guardiola doing a fist pump with Steve Bruce with his little Greg's bag. How I miss those lovely days. Ryanair, you're a pro footballer, but your mum still prints your boarding pass at home. Just a sign of the Sunderland lads on the way to the airport, of course, Newcastle Airport, not Sunderland Airport, I hasten to add. Peter Clennell, he had a couple in this week. He sent us this one, though. This was a good one. My iPhone has created a video called Good Food over the years, and I'm not joking. Steve Bruce's face randomly appears. Does Thury think Steve is an actual cabbage? Those of you who tune in regularly know I do love scouring the internet for various photographs. I love this one. What a great early photo of Pedro.
Wow.
That's got to be the first photo of him taken at St James's Park. And I know Peter watches the show, and I know John from QTech is helping him with his Peter Beardsley Soccer School. So maybe you can ask him, John, to tune in if he's tuning in tonight. Was that his very first publicity shot when he arrived at the club in 1983-84 season? Cracking photo anyway, widely available on the internet. This one from Mick Gilchrist, 442. Breaking news. Richarlison's medical at Spurs has been delayed after he fell off the medical table and started rolling around on the floor. Following on from that, we saw that after signing Richarlison for 60 million, Tottenham made the necessary changes to their stadium. Big diving board in there, which was excellent. I did like this one. Just it felt rather chilled, and this just missed out on last week. It did copy us all in. Cherry tree stripped naked, and now day one of 4 litres of Toon Army cherry vodka for the start of the 22-23 season. How civilized is that, Alan? Very civilized, mate. I hope you're going to drop some off at the office, and we're going to all share some. This one from Christopher Smart. He says, "I'm sure you've probably seen this, but just in case you haven't, it's probably the truest tweet ever. These things happen, don't they? Newcastle United Football Club are absolutely blessed to have the most flexibly qualified fans in the world. Under Ashley, we were all accountants. Then we were all solicitors after the Premier League held up the takeover. Now we're all civil engineers, architects, and town planners. Wow, what a club." That was brilliant. Great reflection on Twitter. That like absolutely brilliant, mate. This one from Michael Whitfield as well. Finally, the ghost of Steve Bruce's tactics has been removed from St James's Park. Ghostbuster. Ah, classic. It did look like the Ghostbusters were at St James's Park this week. Wayne Bennett, thanks for this one. He said, this is about right. Ship sinking with Man United's crest on. Cristiano Ronaldo off on his boat. Leaving a sinking ship, no doubt about that. Here's another one of my old photographs. I wonder whether that's that game that I queued for. Newcastle versus Wimbledon, the FA Cup 5th round, when I ended up in the queue for Chelsea at home. I wonder whether that's that memorable day. It could be any day. But that was what the ground used to look like, folks, when I first started going to the game. Amazing. I love that. Absolutely brilliant. Great photo. Thanks for sharing that. That came from United on Twitter. This one was on Facebook page. I know I've said this is a non-selling group, but times are hard. I'm doing 3 for 60 or 25 each. They're packing bags. usually used for other things by the sound of it on that group. But yeah, thanks for that. Stuart Hines, breaking news: PIF to sell Newcastle after day 45 Wall's End starts a boycott following the £20 match day price ticket for the upcoming pre-season friendlies. Early contenders for new ownership are Donald Trump and Derek and Rodney Trotter. Yeah, you roll over tickets is bloody stupid. Who did this? Says Silvio Tatasconi. Look at the badge. Michael Jackson. Hee hee. Excellent. And the winner this week, I think, was this one from Johnny. Best man speech yesterday, and obviously had to do the toast. The bride, the groom, and about 70% of the room, all Borough season ticket holders, told everyone to stand and raise their glass, waited for them to do it, and then said to Eddie Howe and Newcastle United, up the marks. Absolutely brilliant. I love stuff like that. Thanks. Keep them coming in. Even though it was a bit of a barren week on the old Newcastle front on social media, we still managed to get them in. Send them to me if you can at Steve Rape on Twitter. Pre-season friendlies are imminent. Newcastle, of course, Gateshead behind closed doors, and then off to Austria before we get back, and we have some rather tougher fixtures going into the season. German fans were trying to get the pre-season friendlies stopped, Mitch. Might be protests at them as well. It's obviously surrounding our new owners, or not so new owners now. But yeah, just strange to see them, making a stand, isn't it?
I don't find it strange given the culture in German football. They're entitled to feel how they do. Everybody's entitled to their opinion on it. Yet, you got to ask, your clubs still need money to run, so why have they picked us for a pre-season friendly, or why have they happy to negotiate with us for a pre-season friendly? Because they're going to get cash in their coffers, and that ultimately is what makes the game run. I would also like to see, would they take the same stance were we drawn against them in European competition? I would bet yes, bottom dollar they wouldn't. It's very, very easy to make a stance in a game that is effectively, it's a friendly. It's a nice little bit of solidarity within a certain part of the football supporting community. I totally understand it. I get where they're coming from. But at the same time, their clubs feel happy to do business with Newcastle United, and they're going to have to get used to that. If we in the future would come along and offer them money for a player that will pay their club's wages for 3 years, I suspect the clubs would snap our hands off, and they'd have to live with that. Because ultimately the clubs will make the decisions. I know everybody talks about the 50+1 and how amazing it is in Germany, but let's be realistic here. When Bayern Munich fans were starting to get objectionable about Bayern Munich's relationship with Qatar, what did their board actually do? Shut the meeting down and went on and carried on without fans there, because ultimately the clubs will do what's right for the club financially, and the fans can make their chops flat as much as they like. It's already been demonstrated the fallibility of that, and for me, the illusion that the fans have the power in Germany, they don't. They really don't. And I think a lot of clubs play very good lip service to it. But ultimately, the clubs will always do what's right for the club. And I think they understand the nature of business in modern football. Yes, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody and their dog seems to have an opinion about Newcastle United and their owners. This is something as a fan base we've been counselling everybody for the last 18 months plus about biting your lip and taking certain things on the chin. And this is one we genuinely just, I feel as a fan base, we don't need to engage with that, because it's not going to, we're not going to achieve anything other than more criticism if we respond to that in the wrong way, because then everybody will start pointing fingers going, hey, sports washing is working. So you cannot win. We as a fan base can't win in this situation. Let them have their 5 minutes with their letters and their strongly worded oppositions. The reality is football needs monetarily input to keep going at all levels across Europe, and that's the reality of the world at the moment.
Yeah. Keith, would you agree with
it's amazing. It's amazing how many people must have got a master's degree on the 7th of October in international politics. And I know a lot of people in Sunderland got them, but how hypocritical the men's people to sit there and say they want to stop a game. It's got nothing to do with them. It's what the clubs arranged with Newcastle. But tell me this, weren't they the same club that protested because they were going to sign so many black players? And they were putting something out to say that they didn't want certain people from certain races playing at their club. They were going to object to that. They wanted all, and that's pure racism. So what's our crime? Our crime is we're going to continue to support the team, and we're going to support the owners, and we're going to hope that any shortcomings in Saudi Arabia towards human rights have been addressed, and they're moving away from, from the dark ages. So we back in our owners and back in our club. What's their crime? They want rid of a certain colour skin playing for them. Well, sorry, I just don't think there's any comparison. And I think people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, but main supporters are on record of having objected to an influx of a certain colour player. I find it sick, twisted, and sad. I find them a bunch of hypocrites. So if they don't want to play, don't bother. Because when you go, you've got history for booing black players. You need to get over yourselves before you start popping other people.
Very good point. Well made, Steve, from Keith there. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? This is the nature of football at the moment. This is the nature of politics. This is the nature of European politics, about the whole structure of who you can side up to and who you should be objecting about. I'm like Mitch. I understand exactly where they're coming from, because they feel as though they need to make a stance. It's they've seen the top level topic. They've seen the words. They've seen the owners. They've made a conscious decision that one is linked to the other in terms of human rights and the country, or human rights and our owners, and human rights and the company that owns our football club, or 80% of it. But the much bigger picture is when you dig under the surface and you establish the facts. Sometimes it's easy to just look at the headline and not go below the surface and start to extrapolate exactly what's what. It's something that we're going to have to live with. We're going to have to carry on living with this sort of criticism. Money makes the world go round at the end of the day. We're in a really serious financial situation. caused by geopolitics and the argument with Russia. It could drag the rest of Europe into some sort of really, really serious situation. We've got the risk of famine in Africa because of that. We've got the risk of migrants and displaced people and refugees right across Europe. There's an awful lot going on in Europe that we're either hiding from or not willing to talk about or not willing to grasp. And Newcastle United are a target for something totally different, and easy picking in the sporting world. I think the fan, I can understand where they're coming from. I don't necessarily agree with them, but I think that there are more serious things to worry about than who owns a football club at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And it's look, we know where we're at. We're going to constantly get this, and we've just got to accept that this is this is where we're at as a not just as a football club, but just as a fan base. And that's just what it's where we're at. But we'll just have to put up with it, and we'll get used to it more and more. Sadly. Okay, time to lighten the mood a little bit. Yes, Elliot has sent us this one. So I went for a meal with a load of electricians. None of them wanted starters. They just went straight for the mains.
Oh.
Good stuff, Elliot. Thanks for that, mate. Always lightens the mood, always hits the spot. Always
brings me back down to earth.
Yes.
Back down to
earth. While we're lightening the mood, Steve, while we're lightening, can I just add that my mood's been lightened this week because for the last fortnight I've been down at Whitley BFC and I've watched upwards of 40 young people playing football for 2 hours and enjoying their football. And I'm watching 2 ex-pros from Newcastle United and Kenny Wharton and Peter Beardsley on that football pitch with those kids, still showing the enthusiasm that they showed us, Kenny in the 80s, late 70s, and then Peter in the 80s and then the 90s. Full of enthusiasm for the game and full of enthusiasm for young people just enjoying themselves and getting something out of it, and those lads putting something back. And if you get the opportunity, you want to go down to Fox Hunters and see these guys in operation, see how they're enjoying themselves, and see how the parents are admiring what the kids are achieving and the way that they're working, and the kids coming off absolutely shattered after an hour or 2 hours in some cases of top class coaching and that type of stuff. That lightens the mood when you're feeling down over a weekend and you go and watch that happening. That lightens the mood. And I honestly, we talk about getting out in the fresh air. Spend 2 hours at the Fox Hunters on a Monday watching those guys, and you'll feel so much better for it. And you also see some really, really good young footballers that have got bags of potential. And if Peter and Kenny can draw that potential out of them and show them a pathway in terms of just little tips that they can take back to their boys' clubs, then absolutely brilliant for the region, absolutely brilliant for local football, great for boys' football, and hopefully great for girls' football moving forward. It really is good. It really is good to see. It brightens the heart, put it that way. It brightens the heart to actually physically watch it. And feel as though, if you feel as though you're part of it, you might be heading to your 60s, but you're going, wish I brought me boots. Wish I could get out there. Wish I could do it and all. Honestly, it's right. And you're not the only one, because there's loads of dads there doing exactly the same. And there's dads queuing up in their black and white tops, getting them signed by Peter Beardsley, not just the kids. It's great. Yeah, honestly, it's fantastic.
Fantastic. John, I've just had a message from John. He says, Peter's just called. He can't remember ever wearing the book test strip in a match, but he thinks he might have been a promo image, but he's not 100% sure. But yeah, looks like that could have been one of these very first photographs at Newcastle United. It's a great photo.
Sure, that's an Umbro strip, mate.
Yeah, great photo. Anyway, it might be. Yeah, it's not one he would have played in, because obviously he came in '83 and played the back end of that season. And Newcastle, of course, were in the Blue Star strip by then, weren't they? So yeah, great stuff, great memories, and thanks for getting back to us on that, Peter. Okay, Ian Edgar says, "Evening lads, do you think we will just cancel the contracts of players no longer wanted who are sitting on good contracts just to get shot of them?" Mitch, straight to you, mate. You're shaking your head.
No, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work from an FFP point of view. You take that hit in one go in 1 year, and then you cannot amortize that across that, I don't think. So I think it would be foolish to do so. If we're stuck with players on contracts who are happy to sit with their fingers in their arse, then fine, off you go. But I don't think we've got people who are characters like that. I know people have had a go at Kieran Clark recently. I can tell you 100% he would have liked to have had a move, I'm sure, in January, and it just didn't happen for one reason or another. And not that he was turning down loan moves left, right, and centre, as somebody said on Twitter this week. That's absolutely untrue. Yeah. Absolutely untrue. And as a player who I know, who I'm aware, I don't know for a fact, but I've been told has taken at least 2 pay cuts during his time at Newcastle United to stay at Newcastle United. He deserves a bit more respect than that. If you do have somebody who's prepared to hang around and just take their wages, then so be it. They've got a contract. The contract needs to be honoured. There's not a lot you can do about it, but then it's a measure of how serious that player is. I'm quite sure many players in a situation like that would like to try and negotiate a move somewhere with the help of the club, because it's win-win, and everybody wants a win-win situation. But it's how you handle those players. And we've got, I think, in Dan Ashworth, somebody who seems to be one of the best negotiators in football. And everybody talks about what he's going to bring in, but I think people forget he's also part of that structure that moves people out and find the right deals for that to happen. I think the club would actually take hits on transfer fees to let players go rather than pay their contracts.
Okay, Keith, your thoughts on this?
I think Mitch is hitting on there. There's only one difference to what Mitch has said is, if a player can get a move, but he's let's suppose he's got 2 years to run his contract, and if that contract's worth £2 million, sometimes he'll negotiate his way out the contract, say for £1.5 million, and make it in both people's interest to cut it short. And then he'll take another contract for say $750,000 somewhere else. Players aren't going to be earning 40 grand a week and then go and take a contract on 10 if they've got, a year. And people say, well, surely they want to play. But the reality of the club doing it, which is what the suggestion is, it would just mean your cash flow would go instantly, like Mitch says. You would pay the entirety of the contract rather than paying it weekly. So where's the advantage to the club to accelerate and do it quicker? There's no advantage at all, and it won't happen. The only time you're going to get it is if there's a club in the background willing to do a deal with somebody if they become a free agent, or willing to pay part of the wages. But what Newcastle do is they offer the player out and they say, we'll pay a percentage of his wages. That's what they're trying to do at the minute with Dwight Gale, with Hendrick. I mean, some of these people will command fees, like Lascelles, Gale. You'll get a fee for them people. And that's where it becomes difficult, because the clubs buying them haven't got the same structure. Middlesbrough's talked to Gale already, and other people in the Championship have, but it comes back to finances. The buying clubs know Newcastle want to move them out, so they want them for nothing. They want players. I mean, Gale will get you 20, 25 goals a season in the Championship, guaranteed. And I was talking to a guy over here at Young Live Sports, Sheffield United, and I says, you're mad if you don't go for him. Because if you go and get Dwight Gale, you'll probably get yourselves minimum in the playoffs. But it is difficult. You know what I mean? Like Henrik, he's on big money and he's a journeyman. Who's he going to light? Who's he going to light up? Because when we struggled and we were at our worst, he didn't do anything for us. So I feel for Newcastle's got a hell of a task ahead, but I just think you'll find that that's why these people have been demotivated to put it. They've got to train with the under 18s or the under 23s. There's nothing else you can do. You can't have 35 pros all training with the first team. So that's why the likes of Clark and Matty and them have got to do it. It's sad, but it happens. And Mitch is bang on. Why would you? I tell you what Newcastle would say if you said pay these contracts so early. Why should we? Give us a reason. Give us an incentive, which is business.
Steve, I mean, it's significant. We've got players now who are clearly surplus to requirements now being asked to train with the under 23s. Matty Longstaff. I think that was a bit of a shock to some people. Wasn't really a shock to me. But Dwight Gale, Kieran Clark, of course, to name but three. But paying them off, the lads don't think it's an option.
No, and we've also got the added conundrum that added little piece of we've got to bring players in. And Newcastle aren't going to clear the decks and then leave a gap. I think Stewie talked about it on Wednesday night. You're not going to get rid of players and then the clubs that you're buying players from go, well, it's going to cost you twice as much because you need to fill that gap now. What Newcastle are playing a poker game, aren't they? And it's very much hang on. Well, we don't actually need him because we've got a striker there. But if we got him, he would move on. But at the moment, we're happy with a lot, but we just want to add to the squad. At the moment, we're adding. And then we'll do the taking away because we've got to make sure we do have a squad of players that are capable of keeping the numbers together. We talked about Gordon, didn't we? We talked about in midweek, and you talked about Elliot Anderson. Are they two very similar players? One player that clubs desperately wanting to keep, and other clubs wanting to buy. We've seen Tottenham and apparently Newcastle interested in him. And yet we've got a player like Elliot Anderson who's not much younger. And should we be using him in a similar situation, bringing him into squad and making him part of 25? So it's a game. It's a balancing act that we're going to have to do. I heard exactly the same about Kieran Clark. He accepted he wasn't going to be part of the 25. He took it in good grace. He turned to the club, to the coach, and said he still was willing to, and happy to train with the first team. Wanted to remain part of it. It was a squad that he's been part of for so long. He didn't want to be cast aside, which is what happened from January onwards. Went on tour. Has kept up that relationship. But he knows that he's his age, his days are numbered at Newcastle, and he's looking for a way out. But until somebody's willing to buy him, there's nothing he can do. What is it? What does the lad do? Does the lad just walk away and go, "I tell you what, I'll not bother. I'll just go on the dole, then, or I'll just rip my contract up." He's got a contract. He signed the contract in good grace. The club gave him a contract in good grace, and until somebody comes in and there's agreement that of where he's going to go. And he will go if the right offer turns around, or if a club comes in for him. I've heard that there is a club looking at him, and it could happen. Dwight Gale, probably slightly different scenario. Gale's contract's an awful lot longer. I think he's probably possibly still got 3 years on his contract, maybe it's 2. So that again has a bearing on what he's willing to do and what he's willing to accept. And what the club are willing to do as an incentive to move him on if they want to move on at all. Sounds like they do if he's going to be training with the under 23s because he's not going to be part of the 25. But this is why Dan Ashworth gets paid the money. This is why we've gone out to find Dan Ashworth to give him the job, because that's what he's good at. That's what he can balance. That's what he knows. And with his contracts, he's got contacts to buy players, but he's also got the contracts that will help players to move on to pastures new. And in both instances, if both players leave, then they leave with my absolute thanks for what they've done for Newcastle United throughout their tenure at the club. No question about it.
Yeah, I would agree. Hendrick was a Bruce idea. Bruce probably saw a YouTube video on the way Hendrick should move from Burnley to Madrid and then signed him. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think Hendrick's slightly different, isn't it? I mean, Hendrick came on a free. We got Hendrick on a free. The other players were bought. Hendrick came on a free, and probably got a massive sign-on fee, and because of that, got a big contract. Then he actually accepted the loan to QPR last season. I bet you if QPR had been promoted, then it would probably be turned into a permanent deal, and we may not have even asked for money from him. But he's back, and now he's probably looking for another club, and he'll probably, as soon as another club comes in, he'll jump as well. He was in
talking to Reading, I think, Steve.
Sorry,
I think he's talking to Reading at the minute.
Yeah,
That's
but he's an international footballer as well. He was a regular in the Republic of Ireland team, as Kieran was, by the way. So you know, he's still got legs. He's still got the ability to play in that division. And again, you know, it's not his fault that Newcastle United signed him on a free. It's not his fault that Steve Bruce signed him and it hasn't come right. We've had other players that we've signed that hasn't come right who stayed for 5 years and then just walked away and barely kicked the ball. I can think of one Frenchman in particular, you know. But
what about
it is
Cisco?
Well, yeah, Cisco. There's another example.
Yeah, lots of them. Lots of examples of that over our recent history. Okay, time for our monthly competition, and courtesy of QTech, we have a £50 Amazon gift voucher to give away. You will have been collecting clues over the last 3 weeks, so get your pens ready, get your clues ready, and get ready to get into the chat with the answer. First answer that John picks out of the chat is the winner tonight. So your first clue was 14th of December 1939. The next clue was Chesterfield, Newcastle United, and Derby County. The next clue was broke a leg playing for Coventry Reserves. And tonight's clue and question is, the man suggested in previous clues managed the team in 1982. Which player scored 26 goals in all competitions for him? So the man suggested in the previous clues managed the team in 1982. Which player scored 26 goals in all competitions for him? First correct answer in the chat will win the £50 Amazon voucher. John will notify me as to who that is, and I will give that a shout out before the end of the program. Okay, got about 20 minutes left. Let's go into another topic before we get into lookalikes. And the return asks, Mitch, do you think Jamal Lewis has got a future at the club? Given his age, do you not think he has potential? The answer for me is yes. I think he has got potential under Eddie Howe, Mitch.
And I think I would agree with you. I think Eddie Howe sees him as the left back coveted target and wants to work with him. I think his hamstring injury sounds like it was a lot more serious than we were led to believe. He certainly pulled up very quickly when it went. I think I heard the ping all the way here in Dubai. And his confidence got shot after he had that head injury as well for me. He didn't seem like the same player. And he's an international. We paid a lot of money for him, and Liverpool were interested in him, and other teams were interested in him. You don't become a duck egg overnight. The amount of, Eddie Howe's probably really good at CPR because he's revived a number of careers at Newcastle United. And there's another one that I'm sure he'd be delighted to get involved because the potential's still there. And if you unleash that and give Target some proper competition at left fullback, that's a big game, win-win. Everybody's happy. And my understanding is he's seen as he's a player that Eddie Howe likes, and he's a person that Eddie Howe likes, and that goes a hell of a long way. Hell of a long way in our dressing room. So yeah, definitely has a future at the club, and I'll be interested to see what Eddie Howe does with it.
Same for you, Keith. Do you think Jamal Lewis has got a chance at Newcastle?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. He's going to benefit massively from the current setup and the coaching arrangement. So you just the earliest you consider shipping him out would be January. You'd never let him go now. he only didn't get a squad place because he was due an operation. I think he would have got I think he got a place himself. But with all that said, he's young, he's athletic, he's very athletic. He costs 14, 15 million. So, and Jurgen Klopp was looking at him just before he came to us. He can't be that good and then just go off overnight. But I don't think he's had a fair crack. I don't think these people have had the chance to work with him. And target will be an ever-present, but there'll be cup matches and there'll be midweek matches. There'll be an odd injury, and he could come on leaps and bounds. He could be perfect like to bring on after that. So no brainer. Just give him some time with these. It's like Elliot Anderson. There's a lot of people in the chat asking about him. Like, give him a pre-season. Why rush? Why rush to get? There's people clamouring for him. It's obvious why, but we might be looking at worse people than Elliot Anderson at the minute. So to me, when you've got a squad like what we've got, move the older players and the players out of the squad like they've done, and then the people, your Sean Longstaffs of the world, Lewis, people like that, Elliot Anderson, develop them, bring them on, and let's see how good they really are. Because nothing worse. I mean, Ivan Toney shouldn't have been sold as quick as he was, and there's nothing worse seeing somebody succeed in another club. And with this lad, he was proper money, and don't forget he's played under Steve Bruce. He's come through that, so that would have impacted it. That would have impacted his development. So give him a year with Eddie Howe and let's see where he gets. He'll still be worth good money, even in a year's time, if he doesn't become an established left back.
Steve, happy to see him stay on and develop under Eddie Howe.
Be happy to see him develop. Felt as though he got thrown in at the deep end. He played in a cauldron of fan hatred and bile and such like. We all know what was going on under Bruce. He had a difficult time. I think the lad suffered. I think he probably suffered more than anyone in the squad at that particular time. I don't think he let us down. I just think confidence-wise, it went a little bit. And then the injury, I think Eddie Howe will look at him. I think in the pre-season, if we see a bit of him, then that will be telling. And I think more than anything, it will be if somebody else wants him. If another club comes in for him, then I can see him leaving. I can see him saying, you know what, I've had my spell at Newcastle. I wasn't in the squad. I've had an injury. I'd like to start past just new. I could see that happening if somebody came in for him. But I think that I agree with what Keith and Neil are saying in terms of Eddie Howe likes the look of the player, wants to see more of him, hasn't had a chance to see much of him. And if he can develop, and Eddie feels he can develop him as a player, then he becomes an asset again in Newcastle United, and he gets into the 25 man, and he is there to put pressure on target. But it's football. Who knows what will happen? As I say, if somebody comes in and said would like to buy him, and the lad might go, you know what, I might be better off. At least I'm guaranteed first team football at the other club if they step in. So those are the sort of the balancing act that's going to be played with the likes of a squad player like him, where he does have a value and does have a worth, and you could see Newcastle going, okay, then there's an offer come in. Do you want to go? So I suppose that what I'm saying is, for me, the jury's out a little bit. I'd be happy if he stayed. Would I be upset if he left? Not necessarily.
Okay, congratulations to Barry Hogan. He won the competition. He's won the £50 Amazon voucher. He guessed correctly that it was Imre Verratti, the Newcastle player, and have been in communication with Imre over the last few weeks, and hopefully get him on the podcast at some point, which would be nice. So, a quick question from Andrew Maloises, and there's a couple of other people asked this. Do you think the friendlies will be shown on NUFC TV, the home games, lads? Any word on that?
I've not heard anything myself. Yeah, it would be,
no,
to me, if it's sold out, again, thinking about income streams, if they charge the small fee to watch them on streaming, I think plenty of people around the world would.
But it's not sold out, is it, Mitch?
We're
told it was sold out. It turns out it's just the lower levels that are sold. They were not planning on opening the top level. Now they're selling tickets to the top level. And this question, it's quite interesting because I read today or yesterday or today the suggestion that perhaps to appease the fans who were complaining about the 20 quid, maybe the club would make it and would stream the game on the NUFC TV. That was a question that fans were putting to the club mind. It wasn't something that was coming from the club as a possibility. Now, I found that quite interesting. I thought there's somebody thinking out the box and going, you know, there are a section of fans that feel as though it's too much. Would there be another option? The next protocol is, would those who have paid 20 quid complain if it suddenly became available on TV? You're never going to win. You're never going to win.
But you know it is. You know it's great. It's a great opportunity though. If the club are capable of opening the whole ground up, 20 quid a ticket, right? If you don't want to go, you don't have to go. All right. Yeah. It's friendly at the end of the day. But what message would that send if Newcastle could fill the stadium twice? If they could fill it on the Friday night, the Saturday, at £20 a ticket, and have 50,000 in, what a message will that send to the owners? What would it send to the players and the opposition and football in general? If we could put 50,000 in
as well, and like
if you go in and you pay your 20 quid, you could give a toss if it gets streamed or not because you want to go to the game. But for me, like fill the ground. Be the first club that's put 50,000 in 2 days consecutively for a friendly match. You know what I mean? It like these are new wins for us. And people who mention Newcastle United boycott the same sense idiots. They want to get the men with the white coats down to houses to say what's the matter with you? Why does your brain not work? Why is your brain not working properly? Because you want to boycott something. I tell you what, I'd love to see the boycott. I'd love to see how big it was. It'd be like him, his nana, and his granny sitting there. We're gonna have a boycott. Sit there, nana, and you carry that placard. Absolute delusion.
He's on one tonight, lads. He's on one tonight. It's a classic. You're right, though. I haven't disagreed with anything you've said tonight, Keith, to be perfectly honest, mate. So well said. And I think you're getting a lot of support in the chat from people as well. Okay, sit back. It's time to enjoy the two lookalikes. Okay, two lookalikes, and I don't know if anyone remembers, but last week Steve Hasty had a sabbatical, which means, of course, unfortunately, he ends up with double.
No, what do you mean?
He ends up with double bubble. So this one was sent to us on Instagram. Morning, Steve. Couldn't help myself. This is Spit and Dabs of Steve Hasty in a couple of years' time. Which one?
It's not.
Okay, we've had the Quaker one before. This is from Tim Kent. So he sent this one before. This is Steve H. Cloned in Antiques Roadshow. Any old tat. And then we had this one. With Steve appearing on the Farmers Country Showdown.
It's not me, man. It's not me.
This one from Albert just said, "Guess who?"
Is it Albert?
I think Steve. I think Albert's now going out and purchasing things and photographing them. I think that's how bad he's getting. I think that's how bad he's getting. Sam Chipperfield says Steve Hasty looks chuffed at Botman's arrival, lads. Rather dashing there, Steve.
What about the poor lass?
I know. This one again was from Sam. Steve Hasty during the recent heat wave.
I've never had a beard in my life.
This one was from from Mighty Mags. Steve pack it in, will you? Look alike he's made. Charlotte Lynch, on the day that noisy protest becomes unlawful under the police crime sentencing and courts bill, at least 20 police officers have just surrounded anti-Brexit protester Steve Bray. But somebody said pack it in, Steve. Mighty Mags says pack it in. There's Steve Hasty doing it as well.
I thought they were my mates.
No, not in old London. I know they're not. Lee, thanks for this one. Two lookalike. Who's he? Who's that? I've got no idea. Great haircut. Anyway, this one from Albert.
Albert. Has Albert not got a job?
One of the mates.
This one from Tinsy says, okay, need this sort of once for all. Who sees a dancing girl and who sees Steve Hasty?
That's really clever. That can you all see two pictures? Two
I
pictures?
can.
Yeah. No, I can't see me though. Yeah.
This one's from me. This one's from me. A 96-year-old sells house, then they find this inside. That came up on my timeline yesterday, and I just thought, wow, that looks a bit like Steve Hasty.
It came up on mine as well.
Did it? I was also out last week with my dad and Dave. Now, somebody who was sitting opposite us was a bit surprised that I wanted a photograph of that dog. And he says, what you taking a photograph of my dog for? I says, well, it looks like Steve Hasty. And he went, who's Steve Hasty? I says, it looks like him.
This is getting personal now, I tell you.
Oh, God. Okay, so we'll move on to some serious lookalikes now. This one from Grant. He says, Red and White Army ready to celebrate. He said, there's a tune lookalike, the Mackham Steve Wraith at the front. Very good. Very good. This one from Albert. I think that's Toon Tipster.
That's the words are off Dad's Army, isn't it?
He's just put his sure is. This one, Redknapp and Droopy from Tom Dixon. Good one, mate. Good one. This one from Albert. Anyone seen Toon Tipster's teeth?
Hey.
Paul Oxley was in the chat before when Keith was trying to get his internet sorted. Said that he said that Keith looked like Morph, and I just thought, that could be a good one for me and you, Keith. Me and you.
Before his holidays, after his holidays.
Chaz and Morph, good stuff. Another one from Tom Dixon, Jimmy Bullard and Linda Blair.
Oh, yummy. Swelling.
And Marlon Harewood and Goomba.
Oh.
I've got no idea who Goomba is,
Right.
but they've got the same gormless look, so that was a pretty good spot. This one from Jimmy Watt, lookalike for the Three Amigos show on Friday. On the left, Newcastle player Matty Patterson, and on the right, stand-up comedian Paul Smith.
It's good.
Yeah. That's a very, very young Matty Patterson, mind.
It is. This one from Tom Dixon.
Tom, is Tom on drugs?
I don't know who that is. This one from Wayne Bennett. He says, as a self-acclaimed Stephen Merchant double, it's only right that Ben Jacob is added as a lookalike for Friday. And Reece Moggs as well. Very good. I'm sure you'll enjoy that one, Ben. I know you do watch this show. This one from Gavin Lane on Instagram. He says, Stephen Mitch.
Gavin, which one's which?
You're on the left, Steve.
Are you sure?
That is Mitch.
That definitely looks like Mitch. Like, that's very good. That's very good. And the people now going around garden centres looking for Steve.
Yeah.
Wayne Bennett just says more for Friday.
Yeah.
Take
up
pick.
the wrong tree there, Wayne.
Bottom right. The one bottom right.
What about it? What about
it? And this one he sent. That one on the top right there.
Top right is a double.
Top right
is a double.
Wayne, are you on drugs?
This one. This was really good as well. No, not bloody Agadoo. Is that Mitch or is it Dean Michael from Blacklist? 2 people sent that one in this week, so thank you for both sending that in. Very, very good. This one from Just NUFC, French footballer Andre Pierre Gignac and Pete Graves. Sort of. He's got more. He's got more of a look of somebody. I'm trying to think of who else he looks like. I'll have to get. Maybe he's yeah. He's got the look of somebody else. Right. I'm not sure who it is, but it wasn't the first thought in my mind. From Albert again, means nothing. He makes the rules up as he goes along. He's a stubborn sod. It's like asking you to get your hair cut. That was in the reply to Steve. It was a video as well. This one, lookalike, and when it comes, you know who. Oh, God. Steve faced his face after seeing all the lookalike pictures start again.
Hey, God almighty.
Very good. Cheers for that, Wayne. You've been a godsend with these this week. Albert, Bruce, and Jay Lee. That's good. So we're into the top. We're into the top 5 now.
It's got to be some dogs.
Peter G, content of a lookalike. A young Gibbo and a young Rodney Trotter. And we're into the top 3. Coco Lodge from Love Island and John Joe Shelby.
God, poor lass. Poor lass.
Poor lass. Coming in at number 2, Paparazzi and resigned MP Welsh Secretary Simon Hart and Brian Clough.
It's good, that.
Well, yeah, the rosy cheeks, aye.
Not as good as the dogs, like.
The winner by the country mile this week is this. Just Kit. Hi, Steve. I've kept the NUFC Matters lookalikes in-house tonight. How about this for a couple of dodgy lookalikes? Joe Allen and John Gibson could be father and son. What do you think? Take care from Mansell to Dobird.
Yeah.
Very good, that. Very good. So keep them coming. Send them to me. Send them to the lads. But keep them coming. And that is your 2 lookalikes for this week. Last 5 minutes, just time to show the day I met. The day I met, where we ask you to send in photographs of you and players and managers or ex-players and managers or anybody involved with the club, could be the owners. We know they like a photo or 2 when they're out and about as well. Just the one this week, and this is from Toon Mad. He says, how could I forget the big man after a blustery game of golf? And there he is with Michael O'Neill. Great photograph, that. Blast from the past there. Don't forget, if you've got any photographs of yourself with Newcastle United players or anybody who's been at the club over the years, please send them to me or the lads on Twitter, and we will get them on the show. But and we're also on Wednesday night show. If you watch Geordie's Here, Geordie's There, which is quickly becoming a subsidiary program to this one, we're doing a feature called My First Game. So if you drop me a message at Steve Wraith on Twitter, send us your first game. We will endeavour to do that on the show. You might have a photograph from it. Very rare that people do, but if you've got a photograph from your first game as well, send it in and we'll include that on Wednesday's show.
Have you not been trolled? Steve, have you not been trolled this week?
There's one coming. I'm back in the morning, 11 o'clock with George, for those with the days, still in the 1950s, where George recollects his time as a Newcastle fan, going way back in time. It's always a good show. So 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Sunday night, I'm back with Ben Jacobs. And on the horizon over the next couple of weeks, the return of Holly Blades. I'm sure you'll all be looking forward to seeing Holly back on the show. And next week, we've got an exclusive. We will have Liam Kennedy back on the show, live from Austria. And he'll be joined by his sidekick, Jordan Cronin, on the show. So we're looking forward to getting some updates from Austria and the training camp sometime next week with Liam. So plenty to look forward to next week. If you're into the true crime stuff and the alternative stuff that I do on the channel, which I do once a week, I've got Robin Perry, the journalist, on, who has written a new book called I'm the Yorkshire Ripper, Conversations with a Killer. That's 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Well worth a watch. Great insight into that story, and a very, very good book. Very interesting book, and lots coming up over the next few weeks. I've done some really interesting podcasts. Events. Tyson Fury's over. Went very well last night. Some of the lads were there as well. Thoroughly enjoyed it. You'll have heard Steve Hasty referring to it earlier. If you're into your boxing, big show coming up, the Summer Rumble. It is the 10th year of this wonderful event. Okay, it's down at the Stadium of Light, but don't make that put you off. This is a week on Sunday, the 17th of July. If anybody's interested in going, get in touch with me on Twitter and I'll be able to put you in touch with the right people to buy tickets for this. Phil Jeffries and Matty Jobs are promoting the event. It's £50 a ticket for 12 fights. Yes, 12 professional boxing fights. It's going to be a cracking afternoon. It's really good to go down there when when this boxing show is on. It's one of the biggest in the Northeast. So get yourself down there and support local boxing if you can. Keith did ask, have we been trolled this week? Yes, we've got a collective troll. Troll of the week was this one from Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. You blocked on my account, but it did get through to some of the other people. You're a bunch of weird pedos. Thank you, Thomas. I blocked you, and I think everybody else has blocked you. But nice to get back to normal with a bit of trolling. Chris Banks says the Yorkshire Ripper book looks like nice bedtime reading. It's definitely not. Don't read it before bedtime. You'll give yourself nightmares.
Don't go out for a walk at night afterwards.
Exactly, yeah. Keith, enjoy the rest of your holiday, mate. I'm glad we got there in the end with your connection. Thanks for giving up a couple of hours of your time. I know it gets appreciated by the supporters. And Mitch and Steve, have a great weekend, mate. Look forward to seeing you during the week. Take care, lads.
Enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Cheers, everyone.